She cried her eyes out when she got rejected by the Millionaire CEO, but she picked herself up. What happened next shocked the millionaire. The rooftop was a masterpiece of marble and orchestration. Florence gleamed below like a city dipped in gold. Music floated in the air, champagne flowed like arrogance, and Giuliana Moretti stood alone, a goddess in emerald silk. No one recognized her. And that was the point. From across the terrace, Brenham Wilson held court like he always did, smiling for European ministers, sipping aged wine, shaking hands with the kind of people who counted their friends by balance sheets. He hadn't seen her yet, not really, but she'd seen everything. His laughter hadn't changed. His posture hadn't changed. Even his cufflinks, platinum with engraved initials, were the same, ones she used to fasten every morning before he left for the office. But she wasn't there for nostalgia. She was there for clarity. 6 months ago, Brenham had held her against the glass windows of a hotel. Sweet in Rome, breath hot, hands familiar, voice dripping secrets. That same night, in the privacy of the same suite, he'd torn her apart with 9 words. "You were never the kind of woman I could introduce to my board." She'd looked at him then, her lip trembling, her heart exposed, but he wouldn't meet her eyes. She'd left before dawn, numb and silent. That night, she'd cried until her voice disappeared. Her body had carried his scent, but her soul had been buried. She disappeared from Italy, changed her number, erased herself from every digital thread that connected them. And yet, here she was again. Not for him, but for her. Because that night in Rome wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Brenham finally looked her way. His glass paused mid-air. His voice caught. His smile faltered. And that flicker, was the justice she never begged for. He excused himself from the diplomats like a man on fire, but Giuliana turned away before he could reach her, her back rigid, spine aligned with the dignity he once told her she didn't fit. She didn't come to reclaim a title. She came to remind herself she was never the problem. She was always the architect. And it was poetic, really, because the project being toasted tonight, Wilson Global's newest sustainable marvel in Florence, had her fingerprints on every corner. She had designed it in silence, under a ghost alias. Every beam, every curvature, every signature aesthetic, all Giuliana. And he didn't know. Not yet. She took a sip of her wine and inhaled sharply. She had to stay poised. This wasn't about collapse. It was about confirmation. Confirmation that she was never small. That her worth didn't need an elevator pitch or a wedding ring. She could exist, radiant, powerful in the very place he told her she didn't belong, and not need his validation to breathe. Still, when his voice broke through the music, it caught her off guard. "Giuliana." She stopped walking. Every instinct screamed, "Keep moving." But her feet didn't listen. She turned slowly. There he was, Brenham Wilson. $1,000 suit, hair slightly undone from rushing. Eyes locked on hers like nothing else in the world mattered. And for the first time in a long time, Giuliana didn't fold under that gaze. She held it, unblinking, unbothered. It had rained that night in Venice, not a gentle drizzle, but a summer storm that made the canals breathe steam and the rooftops weep. The balcony doors were open. The linen curtains danced in the warm wind. And Giuliana stood outside, bare-legged, barefoot, wearing only his white shirt. It clung to her thighs, soaked from the mist in the air. Lightning flickered in the distance. She didn't flinch. Behind her, Brenham sat on the edge of the bed, shirtless, motionless, glass of whiskey half empty and untouched. The room smelled like him, smoke, leather, a trace of cologne she once bought him in Paris. She didn't speak. Neither did he. Until the storm grew loud enough to drown silence. "You know this can't last," he said finally. Giuliana didn't move. Her fingers tightened slightly around the railing, but her voice came low and calm. "Say it clearly." He took a breath, like the truth tasted bitter in his mouth. "You're brilliant, Jules. You're visionary. But they'll never accept you, not the board, not my father. You make people uncomfortable. They won't see you. Not the way I do. Because of my scar? Because of your power," he said. "You walk into a room like you own it. That doesn't go over well with the men I answer to." Giuliana turned. The lightning lit up her face, rain in her curls, scar stretched across her cheek like a badge. "So, I'm a secret?" she asked. Brenham looked away. That silence told her everything. She stepped into the room, still wet from the storm, and closed the doors behind her. Her hands trembled slightly, not from the cold, but she didn't let that show. Then, without a word, she let the shirt slide off her shoulders. It hit the floor in silence. Naked. Exposed. She walked toward him like she had nothing left to lose. "Touch me one last time, Brenham, and in the morning, I'll disappear." His eyes searched hers, maybe for a trace of hope, maybe for an opening to beg her to stay. But her face was carved from control now. She'd already decided. He put down the glass and crossed the room. They didn't speak after that. There were no promises, no slow caresses or soft laughter. Just heat, guilt, grief in motion. He kissed her like a dying man clutching a final memory. She pulled him closer like she needed to burn him into her skin before walking into oblivion. He lifted her onto the marble counter, his hands steady, hers clawing at his back. Her thighs locked around his waist. She bit his shoulder when the pleasure became too much. He whispered her name between breaths. At one point, his lips touched her scar, and she broke. Tears slid down her cheek, but she made no sound. "I'm not ready to lose you," he whispered. "You already did." They didn't sleep that night. Just drifted in and out of each other, bodies tangled, hearts apart. When the first sliver of morning light crept through the curtains, Juliana was gone. No note. No scent, just silence. Juliana didn't stay for dessert. She'd had her fill of performances. As the orchestra swelled inside the ballroom, she turned toward the exit, her heels echoing over polished stone. Each step was deliberate, calm, unbothered, a contrast to the chaos she knew she'd left in his mind. But just before she reached the grand staircase, "Juliana!" His voice landed like thunder. She paused but didn't turn. Not immediately. He was behind her. Close. The air shifted. And when she finally faced him, he looked winded, like seeing her this close had stolen something from him. "You look like a woman who rebuilt herself," she replied, not giving him the space to finish. Brenham swallowed. His eyes drifted to the scar that no longer tried to hide. His gaze flicked down her dress, not out of desire but reverence. He was seeing her. Not the girl he once whispered apologies to. Not the brilliant shadow he kept behind hotel walls. But a woman who chose her reflection over his approval. "Can I speak with you?" he asked. "Please." She nodded toward the exit without answering, and he followed like a man who knew this wasn't mercy. It was audience. They stood under the colonnade just beyond the gala, Florence flickering behind them like a still painting. Juliana crossed her arms. "You have 3 minutes." Brenham hesitated, eyes on her. Like if he blinked, she'd vanish again. "I made the worst mistake of my life," he said. "I didn't see it fully until everything around me started falling apart." She raised a brow. "Because I left? Because you were never just a part of my business. You were the reason it worked, the energy, the heart, and I chose fear." Juliana didn't flinch. She'd cried all those tears already. "You mean you chose comfort," she corrected. "You wanted legacy without disruption, a woman who wouldn't outshine you, someone you could introduce to your board without justifying her brilliance. I was wrong." She took a step forward. The space between them sizzled, not with romance, but reckoning. "You ruined me," she said, voice low but firm. "You sent me back to my childhood mirror, the one that made me believe my scar was a flaw. You made me shrink. I see that now. Do you?" she whispered, leaning in slightly. Brenham didn't answer. He didn't have to. She kissed him. Not like a lover, not like a plea, but like a statement. Her lips brushed his, soft, precise, unhurried. His breath hitched. His hands twitched but didn't reach for her. Juliana pulled back first, her expression unreadable. That's what it feels like to be touched by a woman who knows her worth. The suite door slammed behind them. Juliana didn't wait for him to catch his breath. She pushed him back, slow but unrelenting, until his spine met the wall and his lips parted in stunned silence. "You followed me," she said, fingers slipping under his jacket. "I had to." "No," she corrected, voice low against his jaw. "You wanted to. There's a difference." She undid his buttons like she'd done 1,000 times, except this time, her hands weren't trembling. They were sure. In control. Calculated. Brenham groaned softly as she traced her lips down his neck, his body reacting before his words could catch up. "You're going to remember this," she whispered. "Every time you sign. A deal. Every time you see a skyline with my design behind it." He tried to speak, tried to say her name, but she silenced him with a slow press of her hips into his. Her rhythm was punishing, focused, measured. She didn't need gentleness. She needed him to understand. And he did. He let her lead. She pulled him toward the bed without breaking eye contact. No pleading. No hesitation. Tonight was hers. She straddled him, commanding the moment, reclaiming every inch of dignity he once made her doubt. Her hands dragged down his sides as her body moved with slow intensity. She didn't flinch at his gasps, didn't pause when his hands twitched with the urge to lead. "Say my name," she ordered, not as a lover, but as a verdict. "Juliana." His voice cracked. She leaned forward, their foreheads touching. Her body remained in motion, unapologetic, deliberate, while her voice trembled with layered truth. "You never deserved me. I know. But you'll feel it," she continued, breathing against his lips. "What it means to be undone by the woman you doubted." She shattered over him. A storm of memory, pain, and clarity. And he broke beneath her. Not with dominance, not with pride, but with quiet surrender. When it was over, she climbed off him without a word. She picked up her dress, zipped it herself, and checked her lipstick in the mirror like nothing had happened. Brenham sat there, undone. Shirt, open. Chest, rising. Eyes locked on her like she'd rewritten everything he believed about love and loss. "Juliana," he breathed, almost afraid to move. "Don't say it again unless you mean something different," she replied, adjusting her earrings. He didn't stop her when she walked out. Because this time, he wasn't the one letting go. 2 weeks later, Milan moved like a city with something to prove. The streets were alive with intention, fashionistas brushing past architects. Deals struck over espresso. Dreams sold in boardrooms and galleries alike. Brenham Wilson stepped out of a black sedan, invitation still clenched in his hand. He hadn't meant to come. The envelope had arrived 2 days earlier, delivered by hand. No return address. Just embossed lettering. Juliana Moretti Design and Impact. Private exhibition. He told himself he was too busy. That he had meetings. Calls. Things more urgent than confronting a woman who no longer answered his name. And yet, here he was. He entered the gallery late, expecting a quiet corner and maybe a glimpse of her work. What he found instead froze him. The room was packed. Investors, journalists, designers, municipal officials, all crowding around a single architectural model. A sustainable coastal development, minimalist, regal, functional, alive. And beside it stood Juliana. Black dress, hair pulled back. Voice calm as she walked a group through the design elements. She didn't stumble, didn't flinch. She didn't look around the room for him. Because she didn't need him there. Brenham stepped forward but stopped short of the crowd. She laughed lightly at something an investor said. Someone asked about her process. She answered with confidence. Authority, warmth. Every part of her was flourishing. And it hit him. Harder than he was ready for. She was never the woman who needed him. He had simply been the man who tried to shrink her light. Later that night, the rooftop was quiet. Juliana stood alone at the edge, hands on the railing, watching the skyline breathe. She heard the footsteps behind her. Didn't turn. "You came," she said. "I couldn't stay away." He stopped a few feet behind her. There was a pause, not awkward, but loaded. "This," she said, motioning to the city lights and architectural beauty around them, "was supposed to be ours. I know, but you chose to dim me instead of standing beside me." She finally turned to face him. Her expression unreadable. Her tone sharp and clear. "Then I realized. You were just a scaffold. I was the structure." Brenham's shoulders dropped. His suit hung looser tonight, or maybe it was just the weight of realization finally sinking in. "I didn't bring apologies. Or flowers," he said. "I brought truth. I'm nothing without you. And I'm not here to fix it. I'm here to learn, to change, not just for you." He hesitated. "But for our child?" Juliana's breath caught. For a moment, the city noise faded beneath the weight of those 4 words. She stared at him, not with anger, not with triumph, but stillness. "You know? 3 days ago. I haven't slept since." Juliana didn't blink. Her hands dropped to her sides as her back straightened, but her chest rose slower than before, like she needed to weigh her breath now. "How?" she finally asked. Someone from the clinic reached out, he said. I guess you didn't change your emergency contact in the system. I didn't think you'd care. Brenham took a step closer, cautiously, as if nearing a sacred place he wasn't sure he was allowed to enter. I didn't just care, Juliana. I panicked. I cried. I thought maybe you'd kept it from me out of punishment. But now I realize, you kept it to protect the one thing you didn't want me to destroy. She looked away. I didn't want my child to feel like a secret. She won't be, he said. Not for a single second. Juliana turned back to him. Her eyes weren't cold, they were tired. Not from weakness, but from years of being strong in silence. This baby wasn't born out of revenge, Brenham. She came from the last moment I believed in us. From the last night, I gave myself fully. I remember that night. I don't want you near her if you're coming from guilt. He nodded. Slowly. Sincerely. I'm not. I'm coming from awakening. Everything I built started falling apart after you left, not just the projects but me. And when I saw your name on that invitation, I realized I hadn't just lost a woman. I lost my compass. Silence fell again. But this time, it didn't sting. Juliana placed a hand gently over her stomach. It was still flat, but firm now, holding the quiet beginnings of someone new. Brenham stepped closer and laid his hand over hers. Not possessively, not pleading, just present. I want to earn this, he whispered. Earn what? Being part of her world, being part of yours. Even if that means standing at the back of the room until you call my name again. Juliana studied his face. There was no charm, no control, no defense. Just a man stripped of every advantage, standing in front of the only truth that ever really mattered. You don't get to lead anymore, she said quietly. Then I'll follow, he replied. She didn't say yes, she didn't say no. But she didn't move away either. And in that moment, it was enough. The rooftop felt different now. The same Florence skyline stretched across the horizon, but the air no longer held regret. It hummed with something else. Restoration. Juliana stood barefoot, the morning sun curling around her like a warm shawl. Her emerald silk robe fluttered gently as she shifted their daughter on her hip. The baby, just shy of a year, reached for the curls falling across Juliana's cheek. You're early, she murmured softly, eyes still fixed on the skyline. Brenham stepped onto the terrace, 2 espressos in hand. His beard was a little fuller, his eyes softer. He wasn't dressed for business, just jeans and a linen shirt, sleeves rolled, hands steady. You left the front page open, he said. You're on it, she replied, nodding toward the folded newspaper on the cafe table. He placed her espresso beside it. Smiled. No, he said. You are. She arched a brow and glanced at the headline. Architect of Change, Juliana Moretti redesigns Florence's future. Below it was a photo, not posed, not polished, but real. Juliana standing in front of her latest housing project, arms crossed, child balanced on one hip, hard hat in the other hand. Power, grace, and clarity, all in one frame. She shook her head slightly, amused. You really meant it, she said. Brenham didn't answer right away. He reached for the baby, and Juliana let her go without hesitation. She nestled against his chest like she belonged there, like she knew the rhythm of his heartbeat now. I meant every word, he said finally. Every blueprint, every promise, every time I show up. It's for you both. Juliana sipped her coffee and watched him. There was no need to narrate their progress. No need to explain the therapy sessions, the nights he stayed outside her door just to prove he wouldn't leave again, or the gentle ways he learned how to be part of a story without controlling it. He'd shown up. Over and over. Quietly. Consistently. She likes it here, Juliana said, nodding toward the baby, who now pointed at the sky like she was trying to name the sun. I like it here too, he replied, brushing a kiss over the top of their daughter's head. It doesn't mean it's easy, Juliana said. No, Brenham agreed. But building anything worth having never is. Their eyes met again. It wasn't a reconciliation sealed with fanfare. It was the peace of 2 people who had already burned and chosen to rise, not in spite of it, but because of it. Brenham placed their daughter down on a quilt spread across the terrace tiles. She babbled to herself, chasing shadows with her tiny fingers. Juliana leaned against the railing, sipping her espresso slowly. You really do fit here now, she said, not looking at him. Took a long time. You didn't try to rush back, she added. That mattered. He moved beside her, standing with a respectful distance, both watching the light move across Florence. "I thought rebuilding meant winning you back," he said. "But I learned that love without worth is just possession." Juliana turned to him. "And now? Now I don't need to lead, I just want to be allowed to show up. Every day." She studied his face. No pretense, no charm, no clever phrasing. Just honesty. And patience. He'd become quiet where he used to dominate. Thoughtful where he used to be proud. And she felt it. Not just in his words, but in the peace of being next to him. No tension. No tiptoeing. Just real. "Do you know what I wanted most after you let me walk away?" she asked. "What?" "Not an apology. Not even closure. I wanted the version of you who saw me as whole." He swallowed hard. "And I wanted the version of me who could hold that." Silence again, but not empty. Their daughter giggled behind them. Brenham turned first, crouching down, lifting her in the air and twirling her slowly. Juliana watched him, and saw, finally, a man who didn't carry love like a weapon. He placed their baby against his shoulder and stood straight again, walking back to Juliana. "She's going to grow up seeing a mother who never shrank," he said. "And a father who learned how to honor that." Juliana exhaled, slow and steady. Then something shifted in her expression, warmth tucked behind pride. "You didn't propose," she said with a light smirk. "Not yet." "Why not?" "Because I don't want to marry who we were," he said. "I want to marry who we've become." That answer caught her off guard. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was real. "I'll think about it," she said quietly. "That's all I need." He kissed her forehead, no grab, no pull, just a reverent press of lips against skin that had once wept beneath his cruelty. Juliana leaned her head against his shoulder, and for the first time, she allowed herself to rest there. Not because she needed saving, but because she was safe. Thank you being here with us till the end of the story. If you've ever been broken, left behind, or told you weren't worthy, this story is your reminder. You're not here to chase acceptance. You're here to rise on your own terms. Comment, "I'm with you, Cedar Light," if this story moved you. Like, share, and subscribe. Help us grow this beautiful family across the world. May your strength be soft, your growth be loud, and your love be earned. We'll see you in the next story.